What a year! Am I right? 2020. One for the history books. Got this majestic beard that my friends say looks like the Kraken, and I don't see it. Got COVID. Family's fine. Everybody's good. Don't worry. And I checked. You cannot get the virus contracted through a YouTube video. Nothing to worry about. You're good. You're good. But 2020 must be infecting things because I have already recorded this video 2 times. But we keep rolling, people. Falling forward, actually. But yes, so in the words of Stained, it's been a while. But I'm so excited to record this video again and show you this beautiful table we have for you this time around. Yes, indeed. Hello, everyone. I am Matthew. This is Clever Woodworking, and today we are going to be showing you the epoxy resin table that I call Betsy. She's my boo. Today, I was hoping we could go through the process and maybe even get to learn a little bit from each other. Mostly my mistakes. Learn from those. If you guys have any questions or are interested in buying this table or even designing a custom table together, then my email's in the description below. Okay, so the first things first is going to be designing what this table is going to look like. For me, that's getting the dimensions. How big do we want this thing to be? For Betsy, this is 42 inches long, 29.5 inches wide, and 17.5 inches tall. Then you get to go pick out what kind of wood you want and make sure that the price and the look match with what you're wanting. This is where Home Depot comes in play. I know that most experienced woodworkers don't like box stores, but I friggin' love them. I think I like them so much because that means that I don't have to embarrass myself at one of those lumber yards. It's like they're ready to pounce on you like a leopard on an antelope. And if you're an inexperienced woodworker, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, I have to train for like 45 minutes just to be able to gain the courage to call and ask what they have. And even after the training, the call still goes like this. It's ringing. Yes, I would like to buy some of your wood. What kind of wood? This is just a goofy example of what an obstacle in our life can look like. But you're in good hands. This channel is all about daring greatly with what we can create. We all have weaknesses and we can't let them define us. Instead, we've got to create a clever way of getting around it or allowing our strengths to be used. So speaking of, our choice of wood. Our choice of wood this time around is poplar, which is a hardwood but is still considered to be 2020, am I right? All right, let me hurry up with this. We use poplar. It's hardwood. It's softer than some hardwoods, which makes it's great. Trying to explain it a little bit though, pine is probably the most known wood. When you think about Home Depot or Menards or Lowe's or any of those box stores, you're probably thinking construction lumber, which is made out of pine. Pine is like the reliable pickup truck that you know is just going to kind of get the job done. Whereas poplar is kind of like, okay, you know that friend that is at your wedding and they don't normally wear suits, but they came in with one and like they're kind of feeling it, you know, and they look great, but it's like one of the sleeves is too long. That's a horrible explanation. Poplar is great. It's a hardwood. It's fancy. It's nice, but it's just not as expensive or not as rough and tough as oak, maple, stuff like that. Once we got the wood from the store, it was time to go over to my dad's to work with a few of the tools that he has that I don't have access to. My dad has been amazing through all of this. I originally was going to do a video like this explaining just how amazing he's been through the process near Father's Day. Happy Father's Day again months later. Has that been there the whole time? And I did so good. Trying to ruin me talking about my dad. Seriously though, thank you, Dad. You've been absolutely awesome. I wish that you guys out there had a dad like mine because he has been extremely helpful. He's knowledgeable, but he also lets me be able to figure out things myself, which is how you learn, right? And trust me, he let me make a lot of mistakes. We make a lot of mistakes during this table. But hey, even if you don't have the guidance that I was able to have, no excuses. You guys can do this. Trust me. Everyone has their own obstacles to climb. You just got to be able to push through it and start making stuff. Even if you don't have tools, I just got like a wrench and like a hammer for the first time. So seriously, you could just kind of put things together and make it work. If I can do this, you guys can do this. The next step was for us to take the freshly cut boards and put them through our planer and... Oh yeah, we don't have one because we're YouTube broke. Planer and joiners are great. Nice to have them. We don't have access to one right now, so we just had to spend a little extra time at Home Depot trying to get the flattest boards that we could, flatter than the earth even. That one's for you, Kyrie. Yep, I went there. So the way that we decided to join the boards together was using this Craig jig. These things are sweet. All you have to do is put the board in this little clampy clamp, right? You just kind of put it right in there and then use these to just, and then it just goes, and now for the layman's terms of using this jig. You use the drill guides here to be able to basically just get you a starter hole that is going kind of like horizontal with the way the board is going as well. So that way, if you've got two boards that are together, you've got a hole that's ready for a screw that's going to actually kind of put those two together. We also made sure that even with the Craig jig screws, we were also putting glue in between the joints as well, just for added stability. Then it was time to make sure that everything was sanded on the top of the table, underneath the table, sides of the table to get it real smooth.
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go.
If you're into watching YouTube videos about woodworking, you know, go through your sanding grits. Go from your 80 to your 120 to 180 to 220 to 400, whatever you're doing, and making it as soft as you're looking for. But make sure to go through each of those because skipping one can sometimes leave sanding disc marks that you don't want. You want everything to look real nice and premium, so take the time for the added work. After sanding everything, it was time to make sure that this table wasn't going anywhere, which I did a terrible job with, but the original goal was to actually take a 1x2, so 1 inch by 2 inches, and adding them flat to the back of the table, which would give it a really nice low profile look, which looked really cool. But with the pandemic and leaving the table in my basement for a while and staining wrong, it ended up causing some problems later that we ended up having to put a couple boards up and down instead of flat, just for the added stability. But I'll explain that a little bit later. Then for kind of a fun part, we needed to be able to lay out the design of the table, which is kind of going into the secret sauce of what makes this company pretty cool. What we do is we like to actually take a router and we will route in, almost like engraving, into the desk whatever shape we want. So in this case, it's hexagon shapes, and then once we do that, we fill it with resin, whether that's clear, whether that's a pigment, that makes it really figuratively any color you could think of. So the design for this table actually came from my very first drawing that I made after my friend let me know what even epoxy resin tables were. It's a little different from what we actually ended up making, but it's still pretty cool to see it come to life. To make the layout, I cut a hexagon shape out of graph paper and transferred that to construction paper to see the whole thing come together. I wish I got some footage of this because it was kind of funny to just actually be sitting on the table and really gently outlining each hexagon with a pencil. I was there for so long that my butt started to fall asleep. It was, actually, I'm really glad I didn't get footage of that. But check it out, though. It's pretty cool to see this thing start to come together after routing one of those shapes. And after getting stain on it, it looked even better. A trick that I use, which really isn't much of a trick, but if you're not used to doing this kind of stuff, this will be something that's new to you. There's actually something called pre-stain or wood conditioner, which is just kind of like depending on what kind of a stain you're using, either it's oil-based or it's water-based. You can just check the labels at the store that you get it from. But the conditioner is something that you apply before you put on the stain, and it actually gives the wood just a easier time of evenly soaking in the stain, so you don't get blotchy looks. Like if you tried to do a project before without using that, you can see sometimes when you're rubbing in the stain or you're painting it on or however you're using it, sometimes there's just blotchy marks. This almost completely takes that out of it. It has worked really, really well for me, so I would highly recommend doing that before you apply the stain. Does my voice sound weird? Is that my voice? All right, be serious. There it is again. Are you kidding me? Come here. Come here. Come here. Getting things done. Gosh darn it. Next, I took a poll on Facebook to see what kind of color people wanted for the resin. And when the results came in, it was black that was the most popular choice. Poplar, like popular, but instead I said poplar, you know, because that's the kind of wood. For the dye, I used Let's Resin alcohol ink. I found them on Amazon, not affiliated with them, but I did enjoy using the product. Just put a few drops in while I was mixing the resin and it went smoothly. As you can see, it looked really good after filling one of the hexagons with the epoxy and the black dye. So I let the resin cure, but when the pandemic hit, we had some issues. I really made a mistake with leaving this table downstairs for a long period of time because the moisture that was downstairs was absorbed by the table, and this thing bowed and cupped and twisted, and it was pretty rough. All this thing needed was a box of Cocoa Puffs and a spoon and some ice cold milk. It was so bold. It was insane. So after quarantining myself, I went to my dad's and asked for some help. And using his Model A looking clamps, look at those things, we were able to get the cereal bowl effect flattened out. We also added some extra braces underneath the table just for added stability over time. But this was not without casualties. We ended up cracking the table from all of that force. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. It was just enough of a crack to kind of offset some things, but we were able to patch that with some silicone, actually some clear silicone, before we were putting the top coat of epoxy over it. A few tips for new epoxy users: make sure to read your instructions. Every brand is different. Every kind of resin is different. Even the different products that some companies use have different instructions depending on the way that you're attempting to use them. I'm so bummed I cannot find the footage of this either. Man, I'm not doing a good job of this YouTube thing. But okay, I'm gonna make it up to you, okay? Don't you worry. Don't you worry, I'm making it up to you. I'm gonna let you stare at this. Oh, that's good. That is good. That's a good little picture. You know when you look at yourself in a picture and you for a quick second you wonder was that Taco Bell day? Every day is Taco Bell day. After the table cured, it was time to stop making all you lovely people stumble and get to work. So after sanding the table with 120 grit sandpaper, the table was ready for another layer of epoxy resin. The reason for sanding between layers is pretty simple. It's just scratching that surface allows you to be able to create a new chemical bond between the two layers. If you don't, you can run into some pretty crazy issues in cracking and things. But again, make sure to read the instructions on your epoxy resin because they may not require you to sand. For mine, they did. Now the top was pretty much done, so it was time to work on the legs, which is actually kind of a funny story. Not funny like ha-ha, but funny hee-hee. Is there actually a difference? I don't know, but all I know is that as a young teenage boy, I was expected to know the difference when a crush texted me. But anyways, me and my dad used a scrap piece of wood to actually set the table up to see what kind of height we wanted. And we ended up actually liking the eye-shaped design so much that we ended up building our prototype of legs off of the scrap piece of wood that we were using. Once we were able to finish deciding on exactly the way that it was going to look and what kind of pieces we were going to use, we needed to get it sanded, needed to get it routed on the sides to give it a cool little design, and get everything glued, screwed, and then painted. At this point, I had a standing table, and a standing table that I was pretty proud of, but I needed to take a step back. I recommend to do this. Take a step back every so often and just look at the piece that you're creating. Allow yourself to be excited about where you've come from and where you are now, but also determine what places you want to challenge yourself to make it even better than it is now. Sometimes things are worth fixing, but sometimes things are just a part of the character of the desk, aka putting some silicone on a piece of the wood that cracked. A wise friend told me that as the creator, you're the one that gets to decide when something is finished. And remember, with great power comes great copyright strikes. So after I had my kind of step back moment, I went to move the table and that thing started to wobble, baby wobble. So after getting frustrated for a little bit, I tried to clear my head, drink some Dr. Pepper, and realized that it was going to be a quick fix. It was just going to take a little bit extra time. So me and my dad decided to add an additional platform underneath the legs just to give it a little bit of a wider base and add a crossbar that actually is connected between both of the legs just to keep it from going back and forth and rocking so much. So then kind of the final touch-ups really was just making sure that the table looked professional and was the way that I was wanting it, which does not include having drips of epoxy all the way around the sides of the table. Before I get into the next clips here, I wanted to remind everybody that working with resin can be potentially dangerous, so you have to be really careful. Be wearing a mask whenever you're working around this stuff, especially if you're going to be sanding it down. It is not recommended to sand down things that have stain. Read the warning labels. You got to be really careful with that stuff and try to avoid it altogether. I wanted to try to be as careful as possible. And again, I do not recommend doing this. I was able to get some pretty cool shots of this though. Of course, being safe, having a mask on, and getting to work. So here we go. This is Betsy, completed, done, finito. Man, it feels good to have that one done. I know I had to go a little quicker here towards the end with some of the parts in the video. Overall, just going to keep working hard to make sure that the footage that I'm getting you guys is the kind of stuff that's interesting and keeps your attention. So, but still, at least for now, just continue to send comments, emails, whatever, any questions you guys may have about the process. If I didn't fully explain something or didn't answer something, or even a question that you had, or even if there's a project that you're working on right now and you need my assistance on it, I'm still learning, you're still learning, so let's learn some things together and come up with a clever solution. But this table, man, oh, I love the look of this thing. It's so luxurious, it's so fancy looking, and I just really like it. So hopefully you do too. And if you do, make sure to accidentally subscribe to the channel, chop the like button in half, turn the bell on. I don't even know what that means. Hopefully all of you guys are doing really good with everything. Hopefully your families are staying well and safe. And hopefully I'm able to provide some content for you to kind of take your mind off of it. Gosh, I hate going through this stuff, but I just wanted to let you guys know that we do have an Instagram that is actually kind of entertaining. It shows you updated pictures of things as we're doing them. It shows some of the projects that we've worked on in the past, along with Meme Monday, which is my favorite thing ever on Instagram. I'm not much of a social media person, so I'm figuring it out. In fact, me and my wife brought on 2 of our friends to help us out with building, with Instagram stuff, ideas. They're all brilliant people, so it's been a lot of fun to work with them, and we'll do some kind of thing to introduce who they are and how long has that been out? I don't know. I don't know, man. This is not as easy as it looks, but we're doing it. We're doing it. I'm telling you. Nothing's stopping us. We're doing it. Subscribe, like, do the things that you're supposed to do. Okay? You don't have to. If you don't like it, thumbs down it. Did you know my wife thumbs down the video? She accidentally did it, she says. I think she didn't like it. I don't know. Maybe we can do better. Can we do better? We probably can do better. All right, I'm ranting. Okay, we're gonna... Okay, just done. Video's done. Done now. Gonna get a snack. Feeling snackish.
Stay